to the topic of today's show is, as we said at the beginning, Zack Snyder's Batman vs Superman. So, first of all, how was your guys' theater experience seeing this movie?
I saw it in a theater that I think had 3 other people in it. I was sitting right up the back, and they were right down the front. One of the guys had his shoes off and his feet up on the seat. That was the atmosphere, basically.
I thought that was required at Australian movie theaters. No shoes, no problem, mate.
Was someone picking their teeth with a giant knife next to you?
No, I wasn't. I did not see the movie of Paul Hogan, unfortunately. He's currently hiding from
the size of an oil barrel in.
Matt, how was your movie theater experience?
It was good. A friend and I saw it. There were maybe about 4 or 5 other people in the theater. Nobody took their shoes off because we live in a civilized country. But yeah, just quiet. Nobody talked. Sadly, I frankly would have really appreciated some talk back. I would have just anything to. It was mostly us, actually, because for the first 20 minutes, my friend and I were just dying laughing at how absurdly grim and over-the-top traumatic it was. There was somebody with a kid, but like not a little kid, like maybe a teenage, like maybe a tween or something. They didn't start crying at any point, which was frankly kind of surprising to me.
I think there was a kid in our theater, but like I said, Felix and I saw it in the same movie theater, the Court Street theater in downtown Brooklyn that we saw 13 Hours at, and it's like
the Secret Soldiers of Benghazi.
Yeah, it's like sort of a megaplex. It's kind of a dingy theater. It wasn't like. It wasn't as good as the time we saw 13 Hours because I don't think there was an operator in the theater. When we saw 13 Hours, the guy in front of us, I'm pretty sure was an operator. So I couldn't laugh as uproariously as I would have otherwise. But the best part about when we saw 13 Hours is that you come in and it's always a scrum. It's like a very tiny like ground floor, and then there's 11 floors of movie theaters, and you have to get in an elevator. So everyone has to pile in this elevator, and we got in an elevator with this woman, and then it's one of those elevators with 2 doors. So the back door kept opening and opening into this loading dock or something, and I didn't know what was going on because I was extremely high at the time. So forgot to mention that earlier. But so already I was feeling I just think at any point they're just gonna take me out of the theater and be like, I'm sorry, you can't see this movie right now. What are you kidding? But we got on the elevator with a woman who proceeded to tell us that she was seeing the film 50 Shades of Black, the Marlon Wayans 50 Shades of Grey parody, for the second time. And the reason she was seeing it for the second time was because she said she hurt herself from laughing so hard the first time and had to leave the theater. That's
cute. That's cute that she's seeing it. That she was seeing it twice. That's adorable. I only saw it 4 times in the theater, but whatever.
And Matt, you mentioned how you were laughing at how unrelentingly grim this sort of superhero comic book movie was. First of all, I think it should have come with a warning. The very beginning of the movie definitely triggered my 9/11 issues, and I think there should have been a warning of some kind. Yeah.
So what I was breaking, what we were laughing at, and I just couldn't stop laughing. It's so basically the second or third shot in the film is a close up of a dead woman's face with gunpowder stippling on her cheek. That's Martha Wayne, then Bruce Wayne's mom, because we have to see Bruce Wayne's parents die in every Batman movie ever made.
That was the first time I came during the
movie. I personally can't wait for the far future when Batman's parents get killed with ray guns because that's going to happen.
Did you guys happen to notice what movie they were coming out of too?
It was Excalibur, the John Borman movie. Yeah,
because what more fitting movie to take your 8-year-old child to than Excalibur?
But that's appropriate because it's just as fucked up to take your 8-year-old to see this fucking thing.
That's very true.
The second shot is a dead woman's face with the fucking powder on her cheek.
Now, okay, in this like the Batman genesis of seeing his parents get gunned down, there was one in the Zack Snyder version of this story. There is one like notable difference from other incarnations of this mythology that I thought was important, and that is the guy who mugs them. He shoots them because Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father, like he balls up his fist like he's gonna
he goes for it,
forced to like defend his family, and that's why he gets shot. And that's why both him and his wife get killed in front of Bruce, right? Like in almost every other version of this story, like the bad guy, the mugger just shoots them like unprompted. Right?
Yeah, in cold blood.
Yeah.
And in this one, it was like, his dad tried to attack the mugger. So in a way,
it's because
justified. It was what I'm saying.
Right, but it also, I think, frankly, for Snyder, it would be more of an indictment of Thomas Wayne if he hadn't tried to fight back, because Snyder is such a worshiper of violence for its own sake and force. He basically agrees with Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins when he said that Thomas Wayne was a coward.
Yeah, yeah.
He agrees that the Nolan version of Thomas Wayne was a bitch, basically. So he had to make his Thomas Wayne. Not only is he played by the guy who plays
Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan, fucking badass comedian. But yeah, he's got to go for the punch. Just be like, my Thomas Wayne is not a fucking bitch, okay? Just right off the bat. He's fucking cool. And he fights, even though it's going to get him killed.
I have to say this is my first issue with the movie. This was the most unrealistic thing in the entire movie, by the way. If you guys know about the 21-foot rule, if a skilled or unarmed combatant is within 21 feet of a thug scumbag with a firearm, he will always disarm him. But, I guess accuracy doesn't matter to big Hollywood Snyder.
I chalk it up to Thomas Wayne just being an effete billionaire who had only fought, in like, maybe he did Muay Thai or something, but
I put it down to him being just a bit fired up after seeing Helen Mirren's tits with his son sitting next to him in the theater.
Those are the kind of moments you never forget as a father.
I would have to say then that movie becomes realistic because he came in his pants during that movie and he violated No Fap November. Not high enough to disarm the knockout game scumbag piece of shit who killed his wife.
Yeah, and I guess this is the other twist on the Batman Genesis story. I guess we'll get more into the specifics of this later, but it was a little hard to tell. It was a bit of ethnically ambiguous casting, but the punk scumbag who murders Thomas and Martha Wayne was unmistakably POC.
We know what kind of POC he was. Me and Will know, but he was Kurdish. Remember that. Me and Will
We're gonna come back to this later.
Me and Will have a holistic theory.
Remember, Mountain Turk. So first thing you see in the movie basically is this woman's dead face, and then 3 seconds later they go to Bruce Wayne trying to save his employees from the big fight in Metropolis that ended Man of Steel. And not only do you see all of his employees die in the Wayne Wayne Finance building collapse that is exactly like 9/11. This is the most obvious. It's like Gus Van Sant's Psycho shot for shot remake of 9/11. It's like Batman is literally running into the gusting debris smoke, which is something you usually don't see in action movies where buildings collapse. That's one of those messy realities that they don't deal with. But here, no, you get the smoke.
No, they went for the realism. But you don't just get that. He calls up the guy who runs it, presumably one of his employees, and says, "You got to get out," which is kind of hilarious because these. Matt. I made note of that scene. So Bruce Wayne is rushing into Metropolis to save an entire building of his employees, and he calls like the head of Wayne Finance in Metropolis, who's on the 40th floor of this office building. clearly watching some sort
They're
of like
watching these guys punch
alien
each other.
mothership destroy Metropolis, and Bruce Wayne goes, "You got to get everyone out, evacuate the building now." And he's like, "Yes, sir. All right, everybody get out." And it's just like, wait, you were waiting for him to tell you to do that?
It really underlined that Batman must be such an arsehole of a boss if his employees are too terrified to evacuate before he gives them.
Wayne Enterprises clearly operates on the Führer principle. Not only do you get that, he gets the moment to realize he's going to die after the building gets cut in half by eye lasers. And then he starts praying. You get a close-up of a man coming to realization of his own death.
The only thing it didn't include was someone just making the choice to jump out of the building rather than be burned alive.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that the head of Wayne Finance looked exactly like Ron Fournier. And he looked like Ron Fournier. And so the reason that they didn't evacuate the building was that Ron Fournier was like, well, the aliens are cutting down the building, but elevators break sometimes.
I really think that Zod and Superman need to stop fighting and create some sort of settlement that is good for both parties.
When he's praying, he's just saying in Latin, "Love that boy."
Again, that's one of those like 50% jokes. We'll see how many people pick up on that one.
What I'm doing right now is called the Clifford Victory.
I want to make one other point about what an asshole Bruce Wayne is as a boss. So like after you see like this building get pancaked like exquisitely, like collapsing into it, just imploding into itself, in probably a better controlled demolition than the one that brought down the World Trade Center. But
seriously, Halliburton should have been taking notes for the future if they do it again.
So Bruce Wayne runs into the wreckage to save people, and one of the people that he comes across is like a security guard for Wayne Industries. And this guy comes into play later, but like his legs are crushed under like an I-beam or something. And he's like, looks at his name tag and he's like, Greg, are you okay? And then his security guard, whose legs are crushed, and he's going, I can't feel my legs, goes, you're the boss. And it's like, I feel like at that point, if he had called him like Bruce or Wayne or whatever, he would have just like left him there. Just be like, don't ever address me like that.
That guy was already thinking of all his medical bills and how he needed to get them paid on his health insurance.
So we're introduced to Bruce Wayne during Metropolis's 9/11, but again, that triggered a lot of issues for me. Being from New York City and whatnot, and I wish they would have warned me going into the movie. But I thought the tone for the movie was actually set a little bit later when. After that scene, we're introduced to Superman for the first time. We're introduced to Lois Lane for the first time as she witnesses an Al-Shabaab militia execute Jimmy Olsen, who is also in the CIA.
By the way, doesn't even get a name in the movie.
But that was Jimmy Olsen, right?
No, it was.
Yeah, it is. And this tells you a lot about Zack Snyder in that he thought that was a funny joke that Jimmy Olsen gets ruthlessly executed by a bullet to the head without ever having his name spoken. Zack Snyder thought that was a really funny little Easter egg for the fans.
The fans will love that.
It's just a little cap tip for the fans.
Jimmy, in Zack Snyder's universe, like the people on Twitter who are like say that reporters are feds, they're actually vindicated for once. They're totally right.
Jimmy Olsen was a CIA psyop.
Well, in reality, there is only one guy that good, and his name is Michael Weiss, and he looks like Matt Brady. But, in Zack Snyder universe, like all the tanky people are like, Jimmy Olsen's a fucking fed. How did he know that Superman was going to be here? And then he gets what's coming to him. He gets what all feds have coming to them. Blah blah.
No, so Lois Lane is reporting on a story from like Africanistan in Africa.
Yeah, I believe it was Namaria. It was called
Namaria.
Namaria.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because afterwards in the film, they only ever refer to it as, and I'm using quotation marks here, the desert.
Yeah. think it was like Nairobi. Like they took Nairobi and changed one letter, something like that.
They didn't want to pay the Nairobi tourism board the license fee to use their name in a movie. But I assume that they were Al-Shabaab. But basically, Lois gets a gun put to her head, and then Superman shows up. Presumably, he was like halfway around the planet, got wind that Lois is in trouble, and comes and saves her. But he didn't do that for Jimmy.
Yeah, fuck that guy. He's a fat.
Jimmy Olsen.
There actually is some indication in the movie that Superman's kind of a tanky, so kind of makes sense.
Yeah, in Zack Snyder's world, Superman is like half tanky and half D-Ray.
That's totally true.
Because there's one point in the movie where Superman Clark Kent is arguing with his editor about like what stories they choose to and not choose to cover, and he's like when you ignore the disadvantage, you're making a choice, and like as a paper, our job is to tell the truth about what's happening in Ferguson.
Yeah, and he actually points out that Batman mostly just beats up poor people,
which is a good point.
True.
That's not very good point.
And then later on,
he's a millionaire who beats up poor people.
Yeah, they put a little cherry on that when Perry White is yelling at him for being too idealistic and saying the WPA isn't hiring.
Oh yeah.
But what's so frustrating about that is that's actually an interesting thing to do with Superman. But because it's an interesting thing to do with Superman, you can't do it for more than 2 seconds because Snyder needs to basically make Superman as unpleasant as possible due to his long-term plan of degrading him because of his deep, deep hatred for the character.
I want to point out that like they do the classic conservative movie. This is like a throwback to 80s movies where like Superman brings up a very good moral point that Batman isn't really stopping crime. He's just assaulting poor people by having the guy that Batman beats up make him a child molester. And that's like complex moral philosophy for conservatives who are like, oh yeah, well, would you defend a child molester? Because I would fucking skin him alive.
That's another thing that I thought was amazing, because that's like the 4th scene in the movie when Batman rescues these women from this sex trafficking.
Asian women.
Yeah, and he chains the guy shirtless to a radiator in this dark, empty house and brands his skin.
Brands him.
It's literally like a scene from Seven.
But like,
and I just imagine some kid going to his dad, Daddy, why are those women in cages? And he's got to go, well, son, when a man wants to make money, sometimes he brings women across the ocean and charges men to have sex with them.
The Bat brand is a total Zack Snyder invention as well. I've never seen that reference anywhere in the comics, but he just had to get that in, that he brands men before sending them into jail to be killed.
Yes, they explicitly say that they get killed in prison if they have the brand, which I don't understand.
Why, though?
You think that there would be solidarity.
Yeah, you think there would be respect.
You think there'd be superstars.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, man, Batman beat me up, not some fucking asshole cop.
Yeah, it's like if you go to jail for killing a cop, like it's sort of like people respect you. If you go to jail because Batman fucking, fucked your shit up, I mean, people would be like, yeah, I respect that. Fair is fair.
I mean, like, we established that this movie, just like if you pick up the actual film reel, there's coke dust on it. Like this movie has, but it's a combination of doing coke and conservative memes. Like conservatives love like the moral world. They love the idea of like moral bikers who like go and beat up Westboro Baptist Church and kill child molesters in prison.
He uses guns a lot in this movie.
Yeah, he uses guns quite a bit. I
remember when the trailer came out, and there's a shot of him with a gun, and it was from that ridiculous, idiotic dream sequence.
Oh, man.
People freaked out because why does he have a gun? Why does he have a gun? And people are like, I think it's a dream sequence. Don't worry. But guess what? He still uses guns all the time in this movie.
Yes.
Not just in the dream sequence.
Yeah, no, I mean, Snyder went out of his way to like make the pains that like this is set in the real world. This is the real world, which I, like for instance, in the 9/11 opening, I thought that was kind of like a conscious refutation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like we're at the end of the Avengers, like an alien army like invades the middle of Manhattan, but seemingly like buildings are raised and like they do battle and like the Hulk is jumping everywhere, like leveling shit, but seemingly nobody dies in any of that. Like there are no casualties whatsoever. Whereas like in Zack Snyder's version, it's like when Superman and Zod fight each other, and I give him props for this. Like he makes it clear that like thousands of innocent people are dying as this is going on.
In Zack Snyder's universe, like the Green Lantern is going to commit Sabra and Shatila. Like Lieutenant Callie gets imbued with powers.
if he did a Black Panther movie, he would literally just murder cops. I have to say though that the impulse to ask the question, "What if superheroes were real?" is the stupidest question you can ask. And
it really is.
In the year 2016, maybe in the 1980s it was different, in the Alan Moore heyday and everything. But if you're still asking the question 20, 30 years later, dude, what would it be like if there really were superheroes? You're a moron, and you shouldn't be in charge of making these movies.
Yeah, well, Zack Snyder should not even be allowed to drive a car, much less.
Well, you brought up Alan Moore, and Zack Snyder was the guy who did the Watchmen movie, right? Which was like pretty much a shot-for-shot recreation of the comic book that nonetheless managed to miss almost every point about the comic book that it was actually about. Like Zack Snyder read the comic and was like, Rorschach is a hero. If only we had people strong enough to stand up to scum like him. Where it was like quite explicitly like Alan Moore was like writing that character like you were supposed to be revolted and repelled by him. And he probably likes the comedian too. He probably really likes that guy as well.
I'm sure that he thinks that Heisenberg is badass as hell and that Skylar's a bitch.
Yeah,
well, Zack Snyder definitely called Skylar a bitch.
Zack Snyder has like 400 posts on Reddit /r like Heisenberg secret stash, where he posts like 5,000 page fan fictions about Walter White killing Skylar. He has his own Joker makeup.
Well, that's the thing that I kind of realized watching this movie is that so Zack Snyder keeps making these superhero movies, but he clearly thinks that he is sort of above them. He thinks that that this kind of material is below his sort of aesthetic level, and that the reason he keeps making them, it seems to me, is that he is fascinated by the tropes of superheroes, but not the hero part, the super part. Like he is fascinated by like anyone having that kind of power. And I think the power fantasy of superheroes is incredibly intriguing to him, and he just gets off on it on like a libidinal level. And so, but movies like this and the superhero canon, the whole thing that is compelling is that you kind of put yourself in the place of some of these guys, right? You like, if you in a Batman sort of Superman movie, sort of what's compelling to a degree is which one are you rooting for, right? Which one do you identify more with? And I realized watching it that Zack Snyder identifies with Lex Luthor more than either Batman or Superman, because Lex Luthor basically, he wants these guys to fight for no reason at all other than he just doesn't like them. And the thing he doesn't like specifically about Superman, because it's mostly about Superman, Batman's sort of just a handy person for him to fight. The thing he hates about Superman is his pretensions of being good. Because for Snyder, that kind of power is to be exercised without restraint. Like when he thinks of Superman, he's thinking of Superman in the Nietzschean Randian sense, And anyone who would have that kind of power and would willingly submit to earthly morality is a fraud and a weakling and needs to be brought down. And all of these movies are Snyder shitting on Superman because he's disgusted by the fact that he will not just assert the power that he has.
Let's talk about Lex Luthor, because Lex Luthor completes the triage of sexual pathologies in the movie. Superman he has sex with a woman, but
he has sex with a woman, but that's just that's a front. I mean, he's in the closet.
Batman is Volcel. He's gay Volcel.
Well, let's define our terms here for the listeners. Volcel means voluntarily celibate.
Yes. And
what about that girl in his bed? Was she
there were a lot of hallucinations in this movie. There were a lot of dream sequences.
That was another dream sequence.
Yeah.
Lex Luthor. He is incel. An incel in Zack Snyder's universe is like, that's the most powerful. There's no one more powerful than an incel. An incel can create beings from other worlds and bring them to light with their incel blood.
Could we talk about the scene where he makes Holly Hunter drink his urine?
What's urine? I never heard of that.
I'm talking about piss, mate.
Oh,
You're taking it.
Yeah, the Todd Starnes shout-out scene.
So Holly Hunter is the senator who wants to, I don't know, regulate Superman or something.
Yeah, it's never explained. She's like,
No.
yeah, she's
a
like
big government lib who wants Superman to
From Kentucky.
Yeah, she's like if John Kerry in 2004 tried to regulate Superman because like it's like, oh, I was for him saving lives before I was against it. I don't know how the real world works.
No, yeah, and then she says at one point to Lex, you can pee in a jar and call it Grandma's sweet tea, but it's still piss or something like that. And then right before Luthor has her assassinated, he puts assassinated